Hey guys, what's up? We have some great stories based on posts on r/writing prompts. Today we have 3 stories on the same topic, but all with very different perspectives. Today's prompt it. After you grow old and die, you wake up 25 million years ago as a hominid primate, asleep on a tree. Your whole life was a vivid hallucination you had after ingesting a funny-looking mushroom. After this experience, you have great knowledge, and you're the smartest living being on the planet. There was nothing but desolation. The land around him was a hard pan full of fissures from where little errant trees and low blades of grass rose. The wind was humid and heavy, and it carried an odd sort of heat. He found himself on the greatest tree laying on the thickest bough, and from there he eyed the seam of land and sky, and there he found nothing but a grey day and vast solitude. He was alone in a place he didn't know, clad in wet heaviness, and full of long and strange hairs. His thoughts spun and eddied, perhaps in an attempt to slink into the deepest burrows of his mind and disinter an immemorial memory, for this place, in odd ways, was familiar to him. But for all that he tried, nothing did he find. And so, seeking for an answer, through careful movements he clambered down the tree, but even with his care his motions were unfamiliar, almost alien to him, and so a branch cracked and a new fissure ran across the already cracked surface. He rose to his feet grumbling, and even the way he grumbled seemed alien. It was then when he looked at his hands, at the size of and color of them, at the amount of hairs and their thickness. There, with the wind muted and the shapeless veil of silence crowding the land, he remembered. There was no desperation within him, no thundering heart, nor anything of the sort. There was one thing only, and that thing was an idea, an objective. That idea was enormous, so much so that it gave no space for others' ideas to be thought. He roved forth in this body that had ceased being his a long time ago. Nights and days he ambled, hiding from creatures he barely remembered, clinging on to his deepest instincts to survive, but his wandering journey came to an end during the first night with a full moon, for there in the moonlit land, rising from a crevasse was a mushroom. And it was no common mushroom, for even looking at it filled him with joy. Without hesitation, he reached for it, climbed to the tallest branch in the tallest tree, and there he ate, and all of this he did with a smile. Many times he returned to the hard pan, many times he returned to the desolation, and many times he sought for a new mushroom. After all, they were the gate to his true life. r/Noah. Story 2. I know it's not a dream, they are out there somewhere in time. I tell myself for the 1,000th time. Knocking 2 rocks together I finally fashion what could be a serviceable spearhead. The once dull rock flaking apart forming a shape point like that time my neighbor BJ showed me. Shaking my head I had to put them back in their box. This wasn't going to work if I kept reminiscing about them. They aren't imaginary, they're just out of reach. Whatever it was that dragged me here, this life, this existence, wasn't the only one I had. I could remember them all, I could feel them all, smell them all. I could remember the first kiss, I could remember ordering upsized fries at McDonald's. It wasn't all a dream. It had taken moments to prove that my knowledge wasn't just fever dream. Counting the seconds as a rock fell into a pond from a cliff, starting a fire, ate in cooked meat. It was all things my furry body had never done before, but my real self knew intimately, and there were no surprises. Gravity fell at the same rate. Sticks and dry leaves burned with friction, and the small herbivore mammal roasted over those burning sticks tasted good, but needed pepper. The things I knew, the things I had experienced had happened, if not to me, then somewhere, and someone. Placing myself in the universe was hard, at first, but after a while the moon's familiar shapes presented themselves. The stars were a little off, but the face of the moon shone down on me with its familiar smile. I was on Earth, but things were different, wilder, more primitive. I don't know how many nights I woke up, in cold hard sweat having an existential crisis that my existence here would wipe all of them out. That I would eat the wrong animal, or stomp on the wrong sapling. I wasn't a butterfly in time making small ripples, I was a boulder thrown into the deep end swamping nascent humanity's boat. Or was I supposed to be Was I the spark that lit the fire? The only decision I had was to truck on, to try and think of myself as the first, and not the last. Hope, apparently, was a new concept to both my daytime and nighttime self. Building a shelter drew from early cadet training, hunting for food, setting traps. The animals I was finding weren't rabbits, but they sure fell for snares rigged from moss and vines. Every time I upgraded my situation, I was reminded of countless YouTube videos my bored nighttime self had watched. Survivalist stuff, historical stuff. Primitive technology made me chuckle when I remembered it. Life was hard, but getting more secure, and some of the other, and I'm using the term loosely, people had taken notice. I'd started growing a few crops. Mostly berries that my daytime self had found delicious, but other vegetables and some fruit were starting in the field I had planted. I'd even taken to breeding some of the mammals. I wonder, was I responsible for the shape of some modern animals, or was I preventing it? r/Jax 9999. Story 3. 100 years, shards of future and dreamy visions of lessons and love, expanded his mind like a sponge in water. It drank the knowledge, swelling, evolving millions of years in mere moments as he slept. By the time his eyes opened, it was like his head felt heavier, and his heart drooped with the pain of 100 false losses. The world he'd been born into suddenly felt foreign to reforged eyes. The one rose, a mental giant amongst skittering animals once seen as peers. He saw light bouncing off the earth as vectors studied in physics class, and noted a slight curvature to a horizon that always looked flat. The stars no longer looked like specks of mineral in the distance, but giants, ancient relatives that began it all. He wanted to speak, but a numb, dull tongue felt like lead in his mouth. That would require some work. Yes, work, there was so much to do, wasn't there? Problems to solve, knowledge to share, technology to build. Why, the implications were immense. The world's order could totally rearrange because of him. A genetic catalyst that bombs the timeline. Grassland underfoot tickled as he strode determined toward his pack. It would take organization, and a lot of effort, but the one knew he could do it. He could change it all. With a purpose, and visions of worlds untold, he stood up straight and tall just like the smooth skins of his premonitions. Unfortunately, the waning Oligocene era was not one for casual strolls in a meadow. A slinking Namravid, effectively a bobcat with daggers for teeth, shifted low in the underbrush, eyeing her meal as it oddly limped on 2 legs instead of 4, injured, most likely, a prime target toward the tree line. Alternate ending for fun. More than any of that, he knew his purpose was to rally and lead. Stoke a fire and gather the wild creatures, dumb though they may be, to a greater purpose. It would take time, and a lot of effort, but the one knew he could do it. He could change it all. With a purpose, and goal in sight, he stood up straight just like the wrinkled skins of his premonitions. He would rally the wild men and form a tribe, then an empire from there. An unstoppable force. This is gonna be Hugh, the one, the smartest being alive, thought to himself. /r/resonating 3. That's it for today's stories. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. We are posting new content daily. See you next time.